Hi, my name's Lydia, and I'm from Thyatira, and I sell purple. When I first met the Apostle Paul, he howled with laughter when he found out I was from Thyatira. You probably don't know why that's funny. You probably don't even know where Thyatira is. It's in Asia Minor. And no, that's not where I first met him. I met Paula in Philippi, where I'm from now. Me, the children, and the servants. When Claudio died, Claudio, he was my owner and my husband. And that's not as complicated as it sounds. Claudio was a merchant who sold purple dye. He traveled the empire. It was his idea that we settle in Philippi, even though the dye comes from places like Thyatira in a region called Lydia. And that's where Claudio bought me, and that's where he gave me my freedom. And that's where I took my name, Lydia, from. When we settled in Philippi, we ran his business together. Oh, and I became his wife. And we settled in Philippi, and I nursed him through his illness, and he left me the business. It is unusual, but it's not as strange as it seems for a woman owning a business. When Claudio first found me, he loved me for who I was, even though I was a slave and owned nothing. I should have learned about love from that. I should have learned from Claudio. What I did learn was about dyes and all the different parts of the business from him. The other merchants, they didn't accept me very well, but I remembered my name, Lydia, and that it meant the freedom I came from and how Claudio treated me, and I did all right. It was in Philippi that I learned about the Hebrew religion. Where I come from, the gods are every bit as foul as human beings. You bribed them with offerings and hoped they didn't bother you. You stayed as far away from them as you possibly could and hoped they stayed far away from you. When we were little girls, we used to frighten each other with, "Oh, don't you go looking too pretty, or Zeus will be after you." We all know how Zeus was with pretty girls. We would hear stories about plagues and exploding mountains because the gods were displeased with this or that. But the Hebrew God, the stories of the Hebrew God were so different. He took the Hebrew people under his wing and he stuck with them, even though they were disobedient. And he disciplined them. And he freed them from the war chariots of Egypt with them complaining all the way. Zeus would have come down with his thunderbolt and struck the whole nation down. But not the Hebrew God, not the I Am. He prepared a land flowing with milk and honey, and he prepared a people to live in it. Now that's someone I could call God. There were about 20 of us that worship here in Philippi, but because most of us are women, we didn't have a quorum that we needed to have a synagogue. Well, Miriam told us that in that case, it's a tradition to meet near water, like a river or a creek. And then we could do our ritual cleansing and ceremonies. Oh, those Jews. They will wash anything that isn't nailed down, and some things that are. Oh. But I came to associate the sound of flowing, laughing water with the Hebrew God and his promise of flowing milk and honey. How sweet it is, how warm. I remember Claudio told me about a philosopher, something he said about time. It gave me the shivers. His religion, my old religion, just rushed on by you while you stood there. It didn't really have anything to do with you. It just didn't care about you at all. But the Hebrew religion, the Hebrew God of flowing milk and honey, it was warm and alive and sweet. Well, when Paul and his friends came to Philippi and discovered there wasn't a synagogue, of course he came looking for a place like this. But what he didn't expect to find was me, a Thyatiran. And so he left. I thought it was just a coincidence, but not him. See, he thought that he had this message that he was supposed to give to a Thyatiran. So he was on his way to Thyatira, but God gave him a vision to go another direction. And so when he saw me, and I don't look at all like a Hebrew or a Philippian, when he saw me, a Thyatiran, he just laughed and laughed because he was right. He was supposed to give his message to a Thyatiran, just not in Thyatira. And I bet he also didn't expect me to be a woman. Oh. His message was about a Jew named Jesus, which didn't mean much to me at the time. But before he gave us his message, he listened. He listened. Now that got my attention. Nobody listened to me. Maybe because I was a woman, or maybe because everywhere I went, I was different. Nobody listened. You would think they would. You would think that would make them want to listen. You would think they'd say, Lydia, where in the world? How did you get here? But nobody did, especially the men. Some just ignored me, and others would tell me all about themselves, trying to impress me. Oh. But Paul, he was different. He listened. He wasn't intimidated or afraid of who I was. I had friends that maybe they were afraid to talk about my past, about my ex-slave days. That they felt like it would make me feel like more of a foreigner. But not talking about my past, it made me feel more less accepted, less at home. So when Paul listened to me, and he wanted to hear what I had to say, and it was amazing. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't intimidated by who I was. He was a strange man. He was friends with slaves and ex-slaves, but he also was friends with wealthy people and city officials. So he was not intimidated by where I was from or where I've come from. He didn't act all superior about my past, and he certainly was not threatened by my success now. We need to check on our dye. Well, anyway, we talked a little bit about Paul too, and about his visions, and it became clear he didn't feel like he fit in anywhere either. He was very, very Jewish, but he was also a Roman citizen and now a follower of Jesus. Well, he said he'd tell us more about that at lunch. He said it didn't matter where he went, everywhere he went, he just didn't feel like he really fit in. And I remember telling him, that's exactly how I feel. Here I am, a Thyathiran in Philippi, a Gentile worshiping in a Jewish house of prayer, and a businessman that's a woman. He knew exactly how I felt. I said, I wished there was a place that I could go that just no one cared. No one cared whether you were slave or ex-slave, Jew or Gentile, man or woman. So he says, oh, actually. And that's when we all decided to break bread and have lunch. And he shared with us the news about Jesus and all about his gospel. And what good news it was. God, the Father, our Father, loved us as his children, and he gave his child for us, for me. You know, what God had done in the past was nothing compared to what he did now. I was right about the Hebrew God all along. He's so amazing. It's the same as he was, but different, like a dye. It's the same dye, but a deeper, more richer hue. That's the difference between the God I had already known and who he was showing me he is now. Oh, Claudio, forgive me. And Jesus, thank you for forgiving me. I forgot. I lost who I was. I thought that people would accept me better for what I had, that I would get love and acceptance. But that's not how it worked. That was just like another business deal. It would be me trying to get as much as I could from someone else while trying to give the least amount of myself as I could. We don't need that. That's just more business. That's not how any of us gets what we need. But me in Christ, I know in Christ that I am a child of God, and he accepts me for who I am. Not for what I can do or make or sell, for who I am. And that frees me. He gives me everything freely. He made me who I am. And that gives me the freedom to give everything I am. You see, it's a gift. He has given us a gift. And he didn't just give us this gift, he gave us our response. You see, he made everything I am and everything I have, and he's made everything about me useful. I hold church in my house now, and I'm able to give to the people in need food and out of my plenty. Do they deserve it? No, they do not. But thank God he doesn't give any of us what we deserve in his eyes. He gives to us everything we have freely. And it's not bargaining or bartering. He gives us everything so that we can respond by giving everything. And we don't have to hoard anything or feel like we own it all because he's given it to us. Even ourselves, he made me who I am. And he gave me the ability to respond to his love. So you see, it's the gift and the search and the finding and our response. Everything comes from him. So now I know who I am and what I am. I'm Lydia. No longer an ex-slave, part Jewish woman with a business. I'm Lydia, one of the followers of Jesus. So what can I do for you?